Hi everyone, DrTinyCat here today to show you how to set up a LAMP stack in your very own home for free. LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. And in more detail today we're using Linux 2004 LTS, Apache 2.4, MySQL 8.0, and PHP 7.4. Full disclosure, I am self-taught and this is the method I've come up with through my own testing, so please keep that in mind. That being said, I welcome any feedback from my audience. By the end of this tutorial, you will have a basic website that is accessible on your own home network by typing the server's local IP address into a browser on any other machine on your network. You will be able to manage the MySQL database backing your website using a visual interface called phpMyAdmin, and you will be able to transfer PHP and HTML files to your website using another visual interface called WinSCP. This tutorial does not show you how to make your website accessible to the wider internet, or how to register your website's domain to the wider internet. This video is pretty long and I will have to cover those topics in another video. So let's talk about what you need to get started. You will need a computer with network capability, a USB key prepared with a bootable image of Ubuntu, and I will show you how to do that, a network cable from your switch or router, and borrow a monitor and keyboard. You won't need them after the Linux installation is complete. Oh, and don't forget a pen and paper to take notes. You will be creating a few usernames and passwords and you do not want to forget them. I will keep a running total of the credentials you create throughout this video so you don't forget any. Let's get started. To begin with, start at your desktop or laptop of choice. Download Rufus from rufus.ie. To get the Ubuntu server image, go to ubuntu.com, download server, click manual installation and wait. Downloading Ubuntu server takes about an hour depending on your internet speed. Get your USB key. It needs to be empty or at least have files you don't care about destroying. When your downloads are complete, plug the USB key into your computer. You can see my USB is visible as blank USB. Open Rufus. Select the USB as your target and select the downloaded Ubuntu ISO as your image. Keep all the defaults and press start. Rufus will warn you that you're about to destroy all existing data on the USB key. Click continue. Wait just a few minutes. Rufus is making a version of the Ubuntu image that another computer can use to boot itself. When Rufus is finished, the ready bar will be all green and you can close Rufus. Safely eject the USB to make sure all write operations on the USB are finished. Now make sure your server is powered off and unplugged. I go so far as to flip the switch on the power supply off if it's there. Attach the monitor and keyboard. Plug in the USB key. Now you can plug in the server to the outlet and flip the switch on the power supply to on, again if it's even there. We're going to try to access the basic input-output system, also called BIOS, of the motherboard so we can configure the motherboard to boot from the USB key. This is actually the trickiest part of this setup because everyone's motherboard is a little different. However, some things are generally true for all motherboards, and I have confidence you can adapt this to your server. If there is absolutely nothing stored on your server's hard disk, the motherboard might present the BIOS without any coaxing. However, if you're like me and you're repurposing an old machine, you'll likely need to tap a magic key to get into BIOS. I'll show you. Press the power button on the box. Right away, start tapping F11. If we guessed right, we should load into the BIOS's boot options. Use up and down arrows to select the USB key, then press enter to restart. If we reach a maroon screen, that's the Ubuntu installer, and we can move on to installing the OS. If it boots into an old operating system that you're trying to overwrite, just power down the server by pressing the power button for 10 seconds, and try again. After the maroon screen, I just wait a few minutes and eventually I'm presented with a black screen with an orange bar along the top. That's the Ubuntu installation wizard. For your own sanity and mine, I will show you the rest of this on a virtual machine. This step is so easy, it takes all of 2 minutes. First, you're asked to select a language for the Linux installation. Make sure English is highlighted and press enter. Pick a keyboard layout. Generally you want English US. Press enter. I'm installing this without a network connection to simplify this initial installation step. Press enter to continue without configuring a network. Press enter to skip setting up a proxy, and press enter to accept the default mirror. Tap down a few times to review the default logical volume management settings and press Enter. This shows the way the logical volumes will be created and mounted on your hard disk. Generally, the default LVM setup is good, so press Enter. Agree to destroy the data on the connected hard disk. Now, enter your name, enter and make note of the server name, username, and password for accessing this Ubuntu installation. You will need to keep these forever. Press Enter. Tap the spacebar to select Install OpenSSH. OpenSSH is what lets us manage the server from our favorite desktop or laptop instead of keeping a monitor and keyboard attached to the server. Wait just a couple minutes for Ubuntu to finish installing. While this installs, I like to select Full Log so I can see what is going on during the installation, and I know it hasn't stalled out anywhere. When the installation is complete, the orange bar along the top will say Installation Complete. At this point, plug in your network cable and unplug the USB. Close the log and select the option to restart. We have 3 more steps before we can disconnect the monitor and keyboard. We need to connect Ubuntu to the network, we need to set up a firewall for safety, and then allow OpenSSH access through the firewall. So, when Ubuntu loads, go ahead and log in using the username and password you chose. Now, issue the following commands. cd, as in change directory, /etc/netplan. Now, sudo nano 00-installer-config.yaml. In this file, use the arrow keys to move the cursor to the Ethernet line. Delete the curly brackets. Press Enter to make a new line. Use spacebar to make the proper indents, and then type eth0: go to a new line, space to indent, then type dhcp4: true. Control X to exit, Y to save changes, Enter to save to the current file. Now, issue the command sudo netplan apply. This applies the netplan, and it gives you connectivity. To check your connectivity, just send a ping to Google. I type in ping 8.8.8.8, Enter. You can see it pinging. To cancel the ping, just use Ctrl+C. While we're here, we're going to take care of a little housekeeping. We need to enable the Canonical software repository for Ubuntu. This repo is what gives us MySQL, PHP, and all that other fun stuff. So let's change directory, /etc/apt. Issue ls to see what's in the folder. We should see sources.list. Let's make a backup copy before we edit it. To make a copy, sudo cp sources.list space sources.list.backup. ls again to make sure backup has been made. Now we can edit the sources.list. Do sudo nano sources.list. Use the arrow keys to get to the line that starts with DEB and talks about archive, canonical, and partner. Delete the hashtag and the space in front of the line. Now you can Ctrl+X to exit, Y to save changes, and Enter to save to the current file. Now we have internet and we have the software repos we want. Let's make sure our Ubuntu installation is all up to date with the latest security patches. So let's do sudo apt update to update the local list of software upgrades available. Then we do sudo apt upgrade to actually download and install the upgrades. Wait about 6 minutes while Ubuntu upgrades itself. When the upgrade is complete, let's fully power down the server. This is a good command for you to know. Sudo shutdown -big P for power down, and now. Well, step 1 of 3 is complete. Let's move on to setting up the firewall. Press the power button on the box. After Ubuntu loads, go ahead and log in. Let's look at the firewall. Sudo ufw status. Oh boy, it's inactive. That's not good. Sudo ufw enable to enable the firewall. If we look again, this time giving the option numbered to list firewall rules, we see that it's active, but there are no special rules. Now, the default behavior of the firewall is to block all incoming traffic. We need to allow web traffic to port 80 to allow viewing of the website we'll eventually host. So to do that, we'll do sudo ufw allow 80/TCP to allow incoming web traffic. Next, we need to allow incoming SSH traffic, but only from the computer we want to work on. If we allow all incoming SSH traffic, the server can be managed from any computer on our network, and we might not want that. We're going to limit incoming SSH traffic to the IP address of our preferred desktop or laptop. To do that, we need to get some information from our desktop or laptop. So moving to our preferred computer, we can simply open a command prompt and issue the command ipconfig. Look for the IPv4 address. On a typical home network, your computer's IP address might start with 192.168 or 172, and it might even end with a /24. You might have multiple listed, and you might just have one. Go ahead and take note of the first IPv4 address. Now return to your server. Back on the server, we will make a special rule just for our remote computer. Sudo ufw allow from, and here we put our computer's IP address. In my case, it was 192.168.1.38. To complete the rule, we add to any port 22 proto TCP. Now your computer is allowed to SSH to this server. However, your computer needs to know this server's IP address to make the connection. Go ahead and check this server's IP address by issuing the command IPA. The first entry is the loopback address, and it's not useful for this. The second entry is ETH0, and you want the IPv4 address. Take a note of this. In my case, the IP address was 192.168.1.172. Let's go back to the remote computer and set up the SSH connection. I'm adding a step here to make connecting to the server a little more natural. I don't want to remember the IP address. We're going to edit a file called the host file so that we can use the server's name instead of its IP address to connect. So navigate to C, Windows, System32 Driver, etc. See that there is a file called host. Now open Notepad, but right-click it and open it as administrator. Windows will ask you if you want to make changes, and you say yes. In Notepad, choose the file and then open, and click over to our other window and highlight the path. Copy it and paste it into the open window. Nothing will show up until you change this drop-down menu to all file types. Select the host file and open it. At the end of the file, add a new line. Press space to indent, then type the server's IP address, space, then the server's name exactly. File, save, and close. Go back to your command prompt and issue ipconfig/flush DNS. This applies the change. Here's the super cool fancy part that lets you run your server without a monitor and keyboard. In the command prompt, type SSH, your username, at the server name. You're being warned that the server you're connecting to is unknown to this computer. Type yes to connect. You only have to do this once. Log in using the password you chose. Now you're in your server. We can do everything from here that we could if we were sitting in front of the server. Let's power down the server one last time so we can safely disconnect the monitor and keyboard. So you might remember sudo shutdown -big P now. The SSH connection ends because the server is off. So cool. Once the server is powered off, please flip the power supply off and disconnect from the wall for safety. Now you can disconnect the keyboard and monitor. You don't need them anymore. Once finished, reconnect the power cord and flip the power supply on. Press the power button on the box to start the server. From here on out, we'll be installing the rest of the LAMP stack from our preferred desktop. We simply open the command prompt and SSH in. Apache is really easy to install. It's just sudo apt install Apache 2. Press Y and then enter. After it's installed, you can see what's running by typing sudo service status all. See, Apache is already running. We can also check it's working by opening a browser and typing in the server's IP address. Apache will load a default loading page. It's important to know how to stop and start Apache. Some configurations can only be set with the Apache service turned off, so issue the command systemctl stop apache2 to stop the service. Systemctl is useful because it will prompt you for a password if it's required, instead of just failing. Now issue systemctl status apache2.service. This shows the Apache2 service as inactive. If you were to reload the browser page from earlier, it would show a broken page. Control-C and Enter to stop viewing the status. Let's turn it back on. Use systemctl start apache2 to restart the service. And you can check using systemctl status apache2.service to see the service is active. Again, use Control-C and Enter to stop viewing the service. Now if you reload the browser, the Apache landing page is working again. PHP is very easy to install too. Just issue the command sudo apt install php. Press Y and Enter. And see it's installed. We can test it by putting a PHP script in the folder where Apache gets all its web pages from. If PHP is working, we'll be able to see the output of the PHP script in the browser. So, change directory cd/var/www/html to change to Apache's website directory. Now, sudo nano to start a new file. I have a little test script I wrote on my coding workstation. I can just highlight all the text and copy it to my clipboard. I can then paste it into the new file by right-clicking into Command Prompt. Control-X to exit, Y to save, and then title it index-php.php and press Enter to make the new file. We can now check that PHP is working on the server by navigating to the file in our browser. We just add that same file name, index-php.php, to the IP address. And look, it worked! Okay, MySQL is a little trickier to install. Unfortunately, the latest version of MySQL has a component called password validation that seems to break password creation done by automated tools written prior to MySQL 8.0. There are two noticeable consequences for this. First, the password for the MySQL root account fails to set during MySQL Secure installation. Second, when we go to install phpMyAdmin later, the phpMyAdmin configuration wizard will fail to set a password, and as a result, fail to configure phpMyAdmin at all. Fortunately for you, I've done the trial and error for you, and we will be able to quickly and easily correct these issues as we go. Just follow along. Let's start by installing MySQL Server. Just issue sudo apt install mysql-server. Y and Enter. Now, MySQL is tentatively installed. We need to set up a more permanent installation. Issue the command sudo mysql_secure_installation. This starts the installation. Press Y for password validation. Press 1 for medium password level. We're going to disable this later. Go ahead and make a secure password for your root account. Make note of it. We will have to redo it later. Y for use this password for root. Y for remove the anonymous user. Y for disable remote login. Y for remove test database. Y for load new rules. It will finish installing. MySQL Server is installed and running. As I mentioned, the password we set for the MySQL root account has failed to set. We can see that when we try to log in as root. So go ahead and try MySQL-u root-p. As you can see, it fails to log in. To make matters worse, even though we disabled anonymous user login, we can still log in without credentials. Go ahead and try this. Sudo MySQL. As you can see, it succeeds. We get right in without a password. Well, right now, the anonymous login is actually to our benefit. We can use this login to make a MySQL user and password we can use for most activities on the server. This first MySQL command will make the new account and set the password. Create user, in quotes, put your MySQL user's username, @ and then in quotes, localhost. To complete the command, identified by, and then in quotes, put a unique password. Please do not use this username or password. Everyone on the internet has already seen it. This next MySQL command gives the new account most privileges, including the privilege to grant privileges. Here we go. Grant all on *** to that same user at localhost with grant option. Finally, don't forget to flush privileges to immediately apply these changes. Let's exit. Let's test the new MySQL user login. MySQL-u, MySQL user-p. Hey, look, it works. Let's fix MySQL root. Behind the scenes, root is currently configured to authenticate using a Unix socket, which basically is a complicated way of saying any user on this Ubuntu installation can just say sudo MySQL and get in without a password. We're going to explicitly change the authentication plugin to the latest plugin using this command. In one fell swoop, we're adding a password to the MySQL root account and disabling anonymous login. Alter user root at localhost identified with caching _ SHA-2 _ password by, and then pick a secure password. Again, don't forget to flush and exit. Let's test these changes. MySQL-u root-p succeeds. And the anonymous login, sudo MySQL, fails, just like we want it to. Okay, we've installed Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. By definition, we have a LAMP stack. But making changes in the MySQL database on command line is cumbersome, especially if you're not sure of the syntax of your commands. It's easier if we have a visual interface with buttons we can click. So let's install phpMyAdmin. As I mentioned, the validate password component of the latest MySQL installation breaks phpMyAdmin installer. Before we can install phpMyAdmin, we have to disable MySQL's validate password component. So let's log in as the MySQL user. We issue this command: uninstall component file : // component _ validate _ password. And then we exit. We need to restart the server, so issue sudo service MySQL restart. Okay, we can install phpMyAdmin. Sudo apt install phpMyAdmin. Y and enter. Hit spacebar to select Apache and press enter. Agree to use dbconfig-common. Set and confirm the password for phpAdmin's account on the MySQL database. It has finished installing. We can test that phpMyAdmin has configured itself by logging into MySQL as phpMyAdmin. And now exit. You can always come back to reinstall password validation, either as the MySQL user or the MySQL root. But all it does is give feedback if our password is strong, as in having mixed case letters, at least one number, and at least one special character. Password validation doesn't change how strongly the password is stored or what kind of plugin is used to authenticate the password. Because the impact is minimal, I choose to leave it turned off. Let's take a minute to check phpMyAdmin is truly working. In the browser, add phpMyAdmin to the end of the IP address. Beware, this is case sensitive. phpMyAdmin loads and you can log in using your MySQL account. In addition to using phpMyAdmin to make managing the database easier, we want a visual interface to make management of the website's files easier. This has two steps. We need to change file permissions on the server, and we need to install WinSCP on our work computer. In the SSH session we have in command prompt, go ahead and issue this command, ls-l var www. This long listing format of the list command shows the permissions on the folder var www html. This D means directory. The first RWX means the owner, root, has read, write, execute permissions. The second R-X means the group, root, has read and execute permissions. And the third R-X means that all other users and groups have only read and execute permissions, not write permissions. So first, we're going to add root and our Ubuntu username to the group www-data. www-data is the group name for the Apache web server group. Use these commands: sudo add user root www-data, sudo add user, whatever your Ubuntu username is, www-data. Now, we're going to change the group associated with the directory. We're going to change it to www-data instead of root. This will give root, our Ubuntu user, and Apache web server rights in the second triplet of letters I explained earlier. Use this command: sudo chown :www-data -big R var www html. Finally, we will update the permissions for www-data to include write permissions. Use this command: sudo chmod 775-big R var www html. We can confirm the changes ls-l var www to show the new permissions. The changes actually take effect after we log out, so let's exit. Okay, I want to warn you that giving Apache write permissions on this directory is probably not a smart move. Unlike root and my Ubuntu username, Apache interfaces with unknown agents on the internet and could be compromised to make changes in the var www html folder that I don't really want. But if you're more security-minded, I suggest you make a new group to take ownership of the folder that only includes root and your Ubuntu username, and leave www-data out of it. On our preferred work computer, we search for WinSCP in the browser and go to the download page. We just run the installer with default settings. When WinSCP starts, it asks for connection details. We choose New Site and then enter the server name, leave port 22 as it is, and we put in our Ubuntu username. Do not enter the password here. Click Save so you don't have to re-enter this. Go ahead and accept the connection. You only have to do that once. And then enter your password. Now you have a file sharing connection from your computer to the server. On the left are your computer's files and folders, and on the right are the server's. To transfer the website files, navigate to the file on the left, highlight the file in your directory you want to transfer, and then navigate to the directory on the right, var www html. Now click Upload. You can check that this worked by adding the file's name to the end of the server's IP address in the browser. Apache will serve the file. So there you have it. That is setting up a LAMP stack augmented with phpMyAdmin and WinSCP. If you need to maintain the server, such as applying the latest security updates, you can use SSH in your command prompt to connect to the server and run these commands: sudo apt update, sudo apt upgrade. Now keep in mind that some upgrades could break existing programs you have running, so read carefully which upgrades are being offered. Review the list of credentials we collected throughout this video and store them in a secure place like a password keeper. Let me know if you have any suggestions, comments, or questions, and thank you so much for watching.